What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we've got our Week 3 fantasy football running back starts and sits for every single matchup. So make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe. Give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. And let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get right into it. Real quick, before getting into our breakdown, a quick word from our partners at Prize Picks, which is our favorite DFS site of choice this NFL and fantasy football season. If you guys aren't familiar with them, do yourself a favor and check them out. In fact, when you sign up right now and use code ADP, you get a 100% deposit match up to $100. And look, we're already doing all this research for fantasy football matchups, so why not take advantage of it and get some profits as well? Prize Picks, well, they allow you to basically do exactly that. They have so many different player prop bets, not only in terms of single stat DFS, but also in terms of fantasy score, and you can combine them any which way you want. Super simple, super easy to use. All you have to do, choose two more players from the board, and then just pick the over-under on their projected fantasy score or on their single stat. Again, pretty much for every single matchup as the week progresses, those options will be updated even more so. And then the great thing is you've got two different options in terms of how you want to bet it, whether it's a flex play, so that way you can miss one of your selections but still win. Obviously, that's the safer choice. Or if you want more bang for your buck, check out the power play, where if you get all your picks correct, well, you win even bigger. So again, check all of that out. Details in the description. And we kick off week 3 with the Panthers at the Texans. And this one, very, very simple. Christian McCaffrey, no duh. Basically, the Texans defense, no bueno. Christian McCaffrey, very bueno. The result, Christian McCaffrey, probably a top 2, top 3 running back yet again. The guy's the focal point of the Panthers offense, not only as a rusher, but also as a pass catcher. The guy's an absolute cheat code in PPR. This one could very well be high scoring from the side of the Panthers. Texans defense hasn't really been stopping too many teams so far, and Christian McCaffrey continues to get fed the football. Don't overthink this one. Christian McCaffrey could very well be the highest scoring running back again in fantasy football this week. For the Texans, I'm fading all these guys: Mark Ingram, David Johnson, and Phillip Lindsay. And yes, to some extent, they've all had success so far heading into week 3, but the Texans will be without Tyrod Taylor more than likely, and I do think that is a step down for this entire offense. And in those situations, I don't want to bank on any of these 3 subpar running backs, at least the way they're currently being utilized at the same time. So for that reason, no thank you. The Panthers defense has been pretty stingy as well. So passing on all 3 of these guys for the Texans. Next up, Chargers at the Chiefs. This one's interesting. Austin Ekeler is a awesome start here, in my opinion. Could be a very high scoring game. I love him in PPR. But you got to keep an eye out on a possible concussion with him. He took a big hit at the end of that Cowboys game during a reception, so that's something to look out for. But, I mean, if you're comparing him to CEH here, he's the much more, high upside type of option, because the fact of the matter is we need to have a conversation about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and we need to be honest with ourselves, because I'm not sure if the guy is even a low-end RB1 anymore. He belongs probably in the low-end, mid-level RB2 range, because he plays on one of the best offenses in the NFL, yet he doesn't have a single RB1 finish. The Chiefs put up points after points week after week, and CH can't get it done in the red zone, in the passing attack. It's really troublesome, and the Chargers defense, pretty stingy, so I would temper my expectations here, but with some injuries that are currently taking place at the running back position, some bad matchups, at the end of the day, you're going to be starting Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but again, probably looking at low-end RB2, kind of production here. Next up, Cardinals at the Jaguars. Not too many sexy names here. Chase Edmonds is the one that I would be the most excited about, because again, the Jaguars defense in that category of not so good. Chase Edmonds, he's not going to get you the rush attempts or the rush yards. I mean, neither will James Conner, because I continue to say it. Kyler Murray, that's what he does really well. And he's going to vulture not only rush attempts, rush yards, but also rushing touchdowns from these guys. But Chase Edmonds does have the pass catching upside. And, versus the Jaguars, at some point in time, if the Cardinals go up big, they probably turn it over to their running backs. So even though I have James Conner as a sit, potentially if you're extremely desperate, but it'd have to be perfect game script that he gets more usage than normal. But again, I wouldn't get too cute here. Chase Edmonds in full PPR formats, I think he is a solid mid-level RB2 on the week. For the Jaguars, I do have James Robinson as a start, but forget about him as an RB1. I think as long as Urban Meyer is there, I hate the usage. It was better than what it was in week 1, but Robinson needs to be used more as a pass catcher like he was in his rookie year. That facet of the game is almost completely gone, and he's just not getting enough rush attempts. If, the Jaguars go down quickly like they did versus the Texans at the beginning of the year, then it could be a long day for James Robinson again. But on paper here, the Cardinals defense, not all that great. So all things considered, he kind of had a not disastrous outing versus the Broncos. So here you throw a dart at him, but I actually much prefer Chase Edmonds in this matchup. As far as our sits, James Conner and Carlos Hyde, not getting too cute with either one. They're the clear backups, or in Conner's case, kind of running back by committee. But when you've got to worry about Kyler Murray as well, no thank you. Afterwards, Bears at the Browns. Starting all the running backs here. Montgomery for the Bears, then Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Yes, the upside is going to be limited for Montgomery facing a good Browns defense, but he's looked good, versus solid opponents these first 2 weeks, and that's very encouraging. This offense, especially if it's Justin Fields under center, could potentially run through David Montgomery a little bit more. So I like him in this matchup. I think he's a high-end RB2 for the Browns. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. I like both of them. Kareem Hunt just had more rush attempts than Nick Chubb in the previous week. That won't happen all too many times, but the guys has standalone value in fantasy football. You got a great option there, especially in PPR formats. Nick Chubb, huge upside with the rushing touchdowns, with the usage in the red zone. So both these guys are starter. I would say Chubb, low-end RB1, Kareem Hunt, low-end RB2. Afterwards, Washington at the Bills. Here, I'm only looking at the starters for Washington: Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissic. Now, I do want to say I don't think McKissic is going to do what he did last week, and by that I mean outscore Gibson and have an awesome game. So I would temper expectations there. I'd even go venture a guess to say that might be one of his better games of the year, because week 1 he was barely utilized. Maybe Antonio Gibson was a little bit banged up in week 2. There was something to that, so the usage wasn't exactly perfect. But here versus the Bills, what I'm looking at is, how much will Gibson be used as a pass catcher? Because that's where McKissic got a lot of his points last week versus the Giants. Either way, I think Gibson is a high-end RB2 here. J.D. McKissic, primarily a PPR guy. Let's not get too cute. Again, I would say last week, week 2 is probably his peak this entire season. For the Bills, I'm sitting all the guys here. And yes, I understand Singletary and Moss are both coming off pretty good performances, reliable type of performances, but versus the stingy Washington defense, that's red flag number 1. Also, now that Zach Moss is active, let's begin with the vulturing of opportunities again. And if you take away those touchdowns, well, it becomes a situation where these guys are getting 10 rushes apiece for about, 50, 60 yards. And that just won't cut it in whatever format you are. So I'm going to be sitting both of these guys. Next up, Colts at the Titans. I'll start Jonathan Taylor. I'll start Derrick Henry. The worry here for me is that Carson Wentz probably doesn't play. So to some extent, maybe the offense goes through Jonathan Taylor and those running backs for the Colts. If you're really desperate, maybe Nyheim Hines as that quick pass-catching option out of the backfield with Eason. But I don't love it. I think Jonathan Taylor, he's kind of struggled these first 2 weeks, but the upside is absolutely there. So I'm continuing to roll him out. For the Titans, you start Derrick Henry. I mean, you saw what he's capable of this last week after struggling in week 1. The guy's a top 5 running back, especially in standard formats. Moving on, we got the Saints at the Patriots. Alvin Kamara coming off an atrocious finish versus the Panthers. Hopefully that's his worst finish of the season, but the Saints offense did look A little bit worrisome, let's put it that way. Kamara has to be more involved as a pass catcher, just needs to get more opportunities, but the game script didn't really go their way. I think this could be a lower scoring game. With Mac Jones under center, I don't think the Patriots are going to force too many things. So I do think it'll be a close score, and Alvin Kamara will get a lot of usage here. I look for a big bounce back, probably a low to mid-level RB1 on the week with higher upside and full PPR. For the Patriots, Damian Harris and James White. I love James White. He's been an awesome value in PPR formats to the extent where he's like a mid-level RB2 there. Damian Harris, he's my guy in standard scoring, a solid mid-level RB2 as well. The Saints a little bit banged up defensively. If this is a close, low-scoring game, I think both these guys will get decent usage. Next up, Falcons at the Giants. For the Falcons, Mike Davis and Cordarrelle Patterson. Patterson, kind of a cheat code here, depending on what your league lists him as, but mostly it's going to be wide receiver and running back, so I really can't appreciate that because he's kind of been pushing Mike Davis. Those carries have been really close. Mike Davis has been kind of disappointing, and Patterson has been heavily used as a pass catcher as well. Now, more so than anything, I just like Patterson's flexibility that you can put him at, one of those two positions. I don't love the matchup for either one of these guys, but I think they both have like low-end RB2 type of, games here. For the Giants, I'm much more excited about Saquon Barkley because all those struggles that we've seen the first 2 weeks, the limited usage, etc., this is the game where it should turn around on paper. The Falcons defense has been getting beat up by everyone they play, and I think this is where we see potentially some vintage Saquon Barkley. I'm very excited for him. I think he has got a top 5 running back type of finish in him this week, if that is the Giants allow him to get his full usage. Next up, we got the Bengals at the Steelers. You're starting both running backs here. I feel much better about Joe Mixon because he gets the volume. And yes, this is a tough Steelers defense. The Bengals offensive line is shaky, but I've seen, a lot more from Joe Mixon than I have Najee Harris. Najee Harris, guess what? The Steelers offensive line ain't that great either. The Bengals have been kind of stingy versus the run. So I'll go with the more experienced running back. I think Joe Mixon is a high-end RB2 on the week. Najee Harris, if it wasn't for that one long reception last week, he would have another very disappointing type of performance in week 2. So, I'm looking at Najee Harris as another guy that probably should maybe be viewed as an RB2, not in the RB1 category. Afterwards, Ravens at the Lions. Tyson Williams is the guy, in my opinion, for the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, Latavius Murray is kind of vulturing him in some touchdowns from time to time, but Williams just looks so freaking good when he's given the opportunities. He's still getting more of the rushing opportunities. He looks more explosive. And versus this Lions defense, I feel like he's going to do pretty well here. I don't think you're going to need as much from Lamar Jackson as you did versus the Kansas City Chiefs. So honestly, if you're desperate, maybe even Latavius Murray can be listed as a start here. For the Lions, DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. Both these guys in PPR formats, I would say, have relatively high floors. Obviously, that of Swift is a little bit higher, but as long as, the pass catchers for the Lions are banged up, I like Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. I view them in the RB2 category. Jamal Williams probably a high-end RB3, DeAndre Swift mid to low-end RB2 on the week. And then I'm sitting Latavius Murray and Devontae Freeman. Yes, Freeman was activated. Yes, Latavius Murray kind of vultured that touchdown, but Freeman didn't get all that much usage. And Murray, if it isn't for that touchdown, he has a very poor performance versus the Chiefs. So that's the logic there. Afterwards, Jets at the Broncos. I'm starting everybody for the Broncos. I'm sitting everyone for the Jets. It's as simple as that. Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon have pretty much been getting 50-50 splits and opportunities every single week. This Jets defense, no good. We saw what Damian Harris and James White both did versus them. I think Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon can have similar type of performances between 10 and 15 points on the week each. So in, again, that low-end RB2 range for the Jets, I think there's too many options. I don't think that the Jets have really committed to any one of their guys. Yes, Michael Carter got more opportunities, but Ty Johnson didn't go away. And then the Broncos, very tough defense. I can see this game getting away from the Jets, them having to abandon the run. This is a bad game plan. Michael Carter and Ty Johnson, they continue to take away opportunities from each other, so no thank you to really all 3 running backs here. Then Dolphins at the Raiders. I'll start Myles Gaskin and Kenyon Drake. Myles Gaskin is tough because Tua trending towards not playing, but I do think Myles Gaskin is kind of saved in terms of how much usage he's getting as a pass catcher, but mostly in PPR formats, I'm starting him. In standard formats, I would be fading him. I would say probably poor man's Chase Edmonds at this point in time. So high-end RB3, low-end RB2 for the Raiders. Kenyon Drake, I'd be starting him. I continue to say I think he has the highest upside out of any of these running backs for the Raiders. Josh Jacobs was just injured. He didn't even play. So he's somebody that we have to track his status for week 3. If he plays, with Tua trending towards not playing, then I probably take a chance on Josh Jacobs. There's just a lot of ifs there in this equation. That's why I currently have him as a sit. But, he's more that standard suited running back in terms of scoring formats for the Raiders. And then Kenyon Drake, not too far away in terms of rush attempts between himself and Josh Jacobs, and obviously gets a lot more work in the passing attack. So I think he is a decent play in PPR formats. And then Peyton Barber, obviously a sit if Josh Jacobs plays. Moving on, we've got the Bucs at the Rams. I'll start Darrell Henderson, but again, that's a big if he plays. Had that rib injury, still kind of question mark, and he's facing a very tough Buccaneers defense. But, when the guy's on the field, forget about Sony Michel. He's getting the heavy usage, which is awesome to see. And again, I realize this Buccaneers defense has been very, very tough, but I think the game plan here is going to be different. I think both these defenses are very tough, and I think that this is going to be a close game where the Rams won't abandon the run, and I think Henderson has that touchdown upside in terms of how he's utilized. So this is all obviously barring that Henderson actually plays, so keep that in mind. If you guys are nervous with the injury and maybe with some of the usage that Michel might be a bigger factor, then completely understand if you guys sit Darrell Henderson. I currently have him as a start because, again, there's some really tough matchups, and some people might not have the luxury to sit a guy like Henderson with how successful he's been the first 2 weeks. And then I'm sitting everyone for the Bucs. Everything that I said about the Bucs defense applies to the Rams defense, and it's even worse here for the Bucs because Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette, they're not committing 100% to either one. Ronald Jones limited as a pass catcher, so just no thank you to both of them. And then for the Rams, I'm sitting Sony Michel because I do think Darrell Henderson probably ends up playing, and Sony Michel is going to be an afterthought. Next up, we've got the Seahawks at the Vikings, and I'm starting both these running backs, Chris Carson and Dalvin Cook. This is a running back matchup that I'm excited for in this game. I think Chris Carson can have a big one, so can Dalvin Cook. I think this can be a high-scoring affair in general. Keep in mind, with Dalvin Cook, he did get banged up a little bit last week versus the Cardinals, so that's something to keep an eye out for. But I haven't heard anything in terms of him trending the wrong direction towards not playing. He's an RB1 in my opinion. Chris Carson, low-end RB1 as well. Moving on, we've got the Packers at the 49ers. I'm starting all running backs here. Aaron Jones for the Packers, he's pretty much a weekly start. This is obviously a tougher matchup than what he had versus the Detroit Lions, but I think he is still in the RB1 category. For the 49ers, I'm pretty much listing the only healthy running back in Elijah Mitchell because Sermon concussion protocol. Jermichael Hasty banged up. Elijah Mitchell had a stinger with the shoulder issue, but it seems like he's the healthiest guy at this point in time. So out of necessity, I think you play him. He's going to get the usage as long as he can go. And I think he's actually going to get a lot of volume versus a suspect Packers defense. So I actually think upside-wise, he might have some higher upside than Aaron Jones here, as crazy as that sounds. Then Eagles at the Cowboys. Miles Sanders, I'll start him, but I think he's in the RB2 conversation. Jalen Hurts, like we predicted, just taking away too many rushing opportunities, and then Kenneth Gainwell, kind of that pass-catching running back, but I'm sitting him. I don't think the usage he's getting there is enough to warrant him being a start. For the Cowboys, both Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard as starts. Pollard has been one of the surprises of the season. Ezekiel Elliott, one of the bigger worries of the season. Can we even call Zeke an RB1 anymore? Is this now a running back by committee? This is one of the more interesting situations in the entire NFL as far as backfields are concerned. And, right now it's trending towards Pollard, maybe this being a 65-35 split, and that might be a little bit optimistic, might be probably 60-40 type of situation, maybe even more so in favor of Tony Pollard. So I'm starting both these guys. I think that the Cowboys are going to utilize both of them. I think obviously Elliott is probably the guy that has the higher upside, but Pollard has standalone value. This is approaching a situation very similar to a Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, but I think both these guys have obviously higher floors. We'll see what happens if these first 2 weeks have been a fluke for Pollard, but if not, Pollard could be one of the steals in fantasy football with tremendous standalone value. So with that, we wrap up our week 3 fantasy football running back starts and sits for every single matchup. And as always, let us hear in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? And if you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at alldaypigskin to continue interacting with us there. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.